Well,
But we played a bunch of games,
rewatch the last
right?
2
And then we
weeks, so
kinda
yeah, there were some
scores,
games.
So that's how we ended up getting here, but...
It's wild what we're doing here in front of your very eyes. All of this unfolds. Nightmare will be taking on Shikigami in our first match of the day in our NA region. Nightmare obviously considered the heavy favorite, whereas Shikigami, they have had a rough start to their season. Guys, take this one away, walk us through the map set, and of course also our hero bands.
Thank you. Yeah, let's jump into this one. Shikigami obviously have a lot to prove, Matt. I think after, you know, struggling where we expected them to. I think it's the 3-0 against Rad in week 1 that, you know, kind of caused us to overestimate maybe what Rad were capable of, and also you maybe not understand exactly where Shiki fell amidst sort of all of this. So, you know, I do think that's kept us honest a little bit. They did beat Amplify 3-1, but Nepal comes up here, and Shikigami have had that Malga band away from them. And we've seen this, right? We know Nightmare are actually preferring not really to play the Malga, honestly.
Yeah, they'd rather play Orisa, Sigma, Ramatra, right? Things other than the Malga. We even saw yesterday they kind of went away from a lot of the Malga comps, even like in head-to-head scenarios. And then a Juno ban on the other side, where even if you're going to play some other stuff, right? On a Lucio, a great combination, you know, Kiriko, Lucio, a great combination as well. So the Juno ban, while impactful, right, orbital ray extremely strong, it's still a bit better. You know, I mean, there's still some supports that you can kind of make work.
Okay, let's see how this plays out here. So with the Juno off the table, it does mean that there are some other options. Nightmare actually might opt out. Okay, so UV on Ana here, we are playing Shrine, so you can play that higher ground. It's the map definitely caters to some degree towards that Ana play. And Shikigami, I'm playing a comp that can really dive this unless you TP directly at them or Danny goes on a solo mission. So let's see what they end up doing with this venture here. As Kaffa surely has a bit of experience in this matchup, but they get to be on the Ramatra. It's gotta be a comfort zone for him.
But I think for Shikigami, you're going to have to coordinate this dive perfectly, or else Nightmare's going to take like a huge advantage of it. And Danny goes in, actually takes some shots there, as UV doesn't even need to use a Baya or a Sleep to be able to secure that kill. It's actually Zero that comes in to help him out.
I mean, Shikigami make the right choice in trying to pressure UV's position, but they just end up on the other side of the map, quite happily, standing in front of Shikigami's spawn, essentially, knowing that there's not a lot of threat to them there. So that's a good rotation from your Ana, because you do have like the Sin TP to go upstairs. You have ways of putting pressure on the backline here. But that leaves the rest of Nightmare so free to just pour that damage in. This was almost Haxel level Shuriken connection for Zero, getting a lot of free ult charge.
I was gonna say, it's a lot of, like, they're not even shooting back. It's so much free ult charge for Zero on the high ground there, as Solo drops low, Graveyard with a swift step getting across this gap, but not able to keep Danny alive yet again, so they're going to lose Danny here first to kick things off.
Now, Drunk is charged up, hitting really hard right now, but still, under a lot of pressure by Genji, especially by Soju, and there's so many things here that are problematic for the Symmetra to deal with. I feel like, overall, the comp that Nightmare has, even if Ana can be a little bit of a hindrance in terms of her immobility sometimes, man, it's just a better comp.
Well, you have the Nano for the Blade, for the Ramatra, right? Whether it be Nemesis Form or Annihilation, just some really sick combos there for Nightmare. And yeah, Shikigami's not been able to, I mean, even with this Sin, they've not been able to get anything going. That's going to be the Vortex, actually slows a lot of them down and allows them to use that Blade. No beat available for Shikigami at the time, so nothing going to be able to save them from that Dragon Blade that comes on through.
Yeah, Regime's just not able to build the barrier in time. And I don't know if you all track that necessarily for Zero. You're just like, well, I hope he doesn't have beat, because I'm going to have a crack at this. Nightmare knew they'd been cycling into the Annihilation, which they could have, used after the fact anyway. So they just got so much to work with, and now diving into Shikigami spawn, forcing a beat out of Regime. There's also a Kitsune Rush being committed to this fight. Kaffa, healthy enough and able to take Regime down. There are no supports, and Shikigami are going to lose this fight. But they spend both support ultimates in. That is, well, it's about as bad as it gets.
That's exactly what Nightmare wanted, though. They wanted to get aggressive, go into the spawn, use their beat, right? It was going to force out Shikigami to end up using up some of their ultimates. Exactly what Shikigami did allows them to actually, just backtrack their Nightmare, use the Annihilation. Shikigami's kind of wasted all their ultimates in their spawn. That's a fast round win for Nightmare.
And again, I feel like they're able to do a hell of a lot with this setup, right? What's the venture really achieving there? They rather have to deal with, hit scan pressure at medium to longer range from lethal. And of course, the Genji, I don't know if it's that easy for them to deal with, especially just poking again at medium range. So I think you've got to be committing to these fights with that Venture comp, otherwise you're in for a bad one.
Well, Venture, they're good when they can get on to the back line, right, and make a play, and with the team kind of going in as well, right? But you're not utilizing the teleporters of Symmetra or even getting like Solo in position to be able to capitalize off of the good things that Venture can bring. So Shikigami now change things up completely. They'll go with a Mei comp here, and this is Red by Nightmare. They bring a Pharah into the mix. This is going to be really hard to deal with.
Yeah, the Doom as well. Gonna be pretty frustrating for Solo, who will often be getting displaced and will have trouble pinning down the front line of Nightmare in general. The thing for getting picked off, though, is the sweet spot for Shikigami at the very least. Makafa's gonna cause issues. Danny's forced back very low out in the open. If Lethal were here, that Symmetra would be in deep trouble. However, Ultraviolet goes down, in theory, to an Ice Spike from Drunk. That's Shikigami finding first picks in both fights.
There's going to be much better staying power on the point for Shikigami here, right? With the Baptiste in the mix, the Mei in the Ramatra. So it's really difficult for Nightmare to like get in and make a play for the point. And Shikigami gets control of it first. And now we'll see if they actually stay on this Doom. The Doom can be disruptor up on the high ground, right? But just with the immortality field, just kind of the sturdiness of some of these heroes, going to be difficult to make a play, as it looks like now you're actually going to have Zero drop down here, just try and drag some of these players off the high ground.
Oh my goodness! A lot of rocket punches connecting there. Stuns going out into a lot of the Shikigami lineup, constantly being disrupted. Kuffer is definitely causing problems this fight. It's just taken Nightmare quite a while to, start the fight on the kind of footing that they were looking for. So they'll get a flip for sure, but Shikigami get a lead, and they have been able to build both support ultimates. They have a Baptiste. I understand the verticality to avoid maybe these rocket punches here, but it does pop you up in front of the Soldier.
In the first fight, Kuffa was able to get like a huge rocket punch connected with like 3-4 players. There was just no follow-up from it, and Graveyard actually ended up using the immortality field, able to keep everybody alive. As all the Symmetra gets really low, that's going to be immortality field used straight away.
Great Javelin, though. That was what interrupted Zero. That is a barrage that was cut short. However, Shikigami, well, they weren't really able to reap the rewards of that little interaction, because on every other front and every other metric and every other part of the fight, they are getting wrecked.
That's a nano onto the far as well, using the barrage. The barrage doesn't get like major impact, like you mentioned, interrupted by Solo's spear. I wonder though if Nightmare, right, you're almost set up in the same position again as they were in the last round, Mitch, where like, could you use Admiral Sound Barrier to go aggressive? You're going to see both support ults used. It's actually going to be right away. It's going to be an Matrix and the Sound Barrier used.
Kuffer's able to get out. Mind you, he won't be fully healed by the time he actually drops back into this fight, but it's enough. Into the back line, some pressure there. Drunk coming into this fight with a... Oh, buddy, see, it's too easy for Lethal. Delaying these shots up after there's a big punch that comes in from Kuffer. Drunk walked into this fight with a Blizzard, by the way, and you can see it's not really in the best spot to make use of.
Yeah, the Blizzard used late, but because you use both of your support ultimates at the choke there for Shikigami, that allows Nightmare to get back to the point and then use their Sound Barrier just for kind of safety, right? They almost probably didn't even need it to, realistically, to end up winning that fight. So use these TPs, and Kuffa's able to follow them up with some punches. You're already going to lose 3 players.
All right, Terra Surge attempted there, and Solo couldn't even survive that. That should tell you everything you need to know about Nightmare's effectiveness of taking their damage and thrusting it straight up in the nostrils of Shikigami on every opportunity. And now, Graveyard's on the Moira to tell you everything you need to know. Very, very straightforward map here. Slower start in the second round for Nightmare, but business as usual for one of our top 4 teams in North America.
I mean, yeah, it's a tough draw for Shikigami. Obviously, they got off to a better start in round 2, but once that setup got broken by Nightmare, it was all Nightmare. I mean, just completely dominant. Kuffa, yet again, showing all the different tanks that he can play at an extremely high level, where they look like they're just picking up from where they left off yesterday.
Yep, absolutely. I like as well, they make an adaptation, right? They bring the Pharah onto Village, which has kind of been a classic Pharah stage on Nepal for quite some time. We start though on Shrine, where this Venture and Symmetra comp here, one that really wants to be all in, that wants to, I mean, God, it really feels like it needs the fight to start on their terms every time for that comp to be as effective. We end up switching up to something like a Mei, but at no point does the Symmetra ever really have any freedom. You're playing this in Pharah's Soldier, and you have a tank that doesn't stand still long enough for you to carve chunks off them with the laser. Like, it does feel like the compositions for Shikigami aren't necessarily tailored for success in a situation like this. And the 0.4 KD, that's tough.
If you also think about it as well, Shikigami really got no value out of their support ultimates the entire map, right? We see them kind of like layer them in the spawn constantly, just trying to make it out.
Still lose.
And still end up losing, right? So pretty rough go here for Shikigami early on. We'll see what they decide to do for the next map.
Yeah, I mean, and there's a question like Shikigami in the past.
That's a fast map selection. They're ready to go.
Yeah, okay, so Esperanca getting picked up here. In the past, they've actually gone to Numbani and Suravasa on occasion after losing some of these maps. So it looks like, yeah, Esperanca, Suravasa, and Numbani are all maps they're sort of wanting to go for here. Okay, we're going to run it straight back. I do think that this can be a map that is at times shaped by the bans, but Nightmare kind of showed us that they'll just play like a Ramatra rush style quite often if they can. Have Zero on the Genji, right? Lethal can play that Sombra. We've seen him find great effectiveness there, especially if there's like a.
What do you even ban if you're Shikigami? Like what do you even go with here? I mean, they went with the Juno map 1.
I think your best bet might be to ban the Genji, as weird as it is on a map like this. Like, if you're trying to target some aspects of what you think Nightmare do very well, it might, like, what's the analog to Genji? You know what I mean? Like, it's not that Zera can't play other heroes, it's that can he play heroes that play in quite the same way as Genji?
I mean,
you probably not.
No, I mean, probably not, but like you can play, I mean, we've seen teams play some Echo, you can play Tracer, you can play Torbjorn, right?
Echo.
Yeah, Zera's got a good Echo, so potentially something along those lines. What? You just got excited about something. We can all see your brain working live.
No, I mean, okay, we got the ban too. So first ban is Ana. Shikigami banning Ana out, which is, I really feel like we only saw Ana on that previous map.
But like,
because Nightmare couldn't play, what was it? Was it Juno banned?
Juno.
But I will say that, like, it's a great hero for UV. They might be concerned about, like, like an Ana comp here. Obviously, that really sets up the Genji blades, makes them very powerful. Symmetra banned here. I think Nightmare don't want any nasty surprises in some of these team fights, right? I think that's fine. Also,
TP can be annoying.
Like, no, bro, that wall character, ban that. I don't want that wall.
Yeah, the TP can be super annoying to like have to deal with, right? And figure out where the opponent's coming from at times. The Ana ban is like a little bit confusing, right? Because UV obviously played it in map number 1, but probably only played it because like there's no Juno in the mix, and UV can definitely play the Juno or Kiri. So like, it's not necessary. I mean, you are taking it away from them, right? But it's not like a necessary pick, right? You're removing out of the equation. Like UV's totally fine playing a lot of these supports.
You're banning a hero that UV only played because you ban another support, but that is the backline that is getting targeted pretty heftily here by Shikigami. 10% of you are very optimistic, and I do appreciate that.
Hey, I like it. There's always a shot. Look, so somebody's got to get big channel points out there, on one of these for
I mean, the bag must be pretty massive out there. I'm not gonna lie, over in the Gamba world there. So I do respect it. I agree. Nightmare, tough team to ban out. I think that's the truth of it. Maybe like you make them the least comfortable when Kaffa has to play something, not Ramatra, but still. Like, I can maybe if you force Kaffa to somehow play Orisa into Malga. Because I don't think he's going to play Ramatra into that matchup. So I think, honestly, Malga is probably where Shikigami find most of their success potentially. And that's just based on what we saw yesterday between Nightmare and Avidity. And that's not much to go on. It was like another Nepal map that was close because of the Malga, but I digress.
No, I think Nightmare, you end up playing this Ramatra. I mean, the Ramatra into the Orisa, you feel pretty good about, right? If you're Nightmare, we've seen them have success in this head-to-head numerous times over the last few weeks. So we'll see. And then also the Lethal Sombra. That was very strong yesterday, right? So just going to be a constant nuisance in Shikigami's side.
I'm so ready for Torb to be able to repair Orisa's armor. Absolutely value town.
There's no way that we will see. Look, you're talking with pro DPS players. There's no way they're taking out the hammer to help the tank.
Hammering your friends though seems great. That's all I'm saying. All right, Lethal has gone over to the Sombra, something that we did sort of point at as a possibility. So Zero though removed. Lethal is going to be able to find the one that's graveyard down, and now we're on cleanup duty. Solo aware that Lethal's definitely hanging like a spectre around this situation, and they will be brought down.
Yeah, Lethal Sombra was really good yesterday, right? Maybe into the Torb, it's like not as awesome, right? And yeah, you're going to see them make a change. So going to go over and play Ashe. So with this composition for Shikigami, it wants to play a little bit closer together. You know, you get value out of the Dynamite here. And it'll be Shikigami actually getting a lead here, Mitch, about 30 meters.
All right. Decent start here for Shikigami. And again, Regime building up towards a beat. Just needs to stay alive, get away from that vortex. They did go a little bit low. Okay, so Suzu comes in just in case Regime had to be kept alive, but I like this a lot. Nightmare don't have an answer for this. Kuffer is out of Nemesis form, so they can't really afford to take the fight. However, Shikigami aren't really able to take full advantage of the beat, Matt. They are trading negatively in this fight because Nightmare were able to keep them at arm's length while their beat was on them. Like, this should not be happening.
Yeah, I mean, those are trades you exactly don't want to see when all the trades are going in one direction. I mean, it's not really a trade there. It's a Nightmare. You know, they end up kind of swapping out 1-for-1 at the start, right? They end up losing Danny, and Kuffa falls for Nightmare. But after that, it is all Nightmare. And now they start to get the bot going into Shikigami territory with double support ult and Blade. This is like this is kind of what Shikigami's been doing, right? You've been using these support ults and not winning these fights. I mean, they're so impactful, right? Just in terms of sustain in the game right now that you absolutely need to take advantage of them.
Solo trying to take that bridge desperately into the high ground. That Suzu might have come a little bit early in the day. Danny still gets bisected. Zero coming back for another pass here, but it's, well, not really a lot of targets. Solo, at least they're able to get rid of Admiral, who just will be on an enforced savings plan, otherwise known as taxes, in terms of his ultimate for the next fight. Whereas Zero just gives a little bit of space. Gotta respect the Orisa, but there's a Bob in play now, which is, gonna catch Shikigami very off guard because they were trying to find kills in that fight, and they were stopped at the door by the bouncer.
Well, also somehow Solo able to live what feels like forever, right? Put a lot of pressure on the Lethal and Zero towards the end as they end up using the Bob just to be able to kind of secure the point, get the space. And now it's going to be a Winston comp. I mean, Winston Torb here. Winston Torb, Kiri Lucio. An odd one, right? No, not something we see every day.
It's not the craziest because really, like, the Torb is the analog for the Reaper that used to be in this comp. And this comp, we saw for a long time at the highest level. So maybe, there it is, Torb's just a better Reaper. Molten Core comes out now. That's drunks all over the floor. Maybe we should have stopped at 2 beverages, my friend. And that is going to be, Shikigami again pushed off a checkpoint and some for Nightmare.
Yeah, that is Lethal falling to himself there. The only way he can be killed is if he does it himself there. Is Nightmare. I mean, they're just cruising at this point. It feels like Shikigami. So now you go over to the Genji, right? I mean, now you're like all in on diving this like UV Admiral backline, right? Like putting pressure on this Sigma. That's nice there. You get rid of Kuffa. But I imagine, like, does Kuffa change off of this, right? Like playing Sigma into Genji Winston is not ideal, right? We talk about how you want to like get past that Sigma shield and get to the back line. Like you can easily do that with this comp.
Yes, Kuffa obviously has to hit the accretion on Solo for this to make sense. Otherwise, you don't have any way to realistically displace the Winston. So it's an odd comp for Nightmare, but if we're here to limit test, I guess I will allow it.
Like, it almost made more sense if Nightmare had, if they had a Torb in the mix, right? Like, the Torb could be a deterrent to the Winston, or the Genji is, some of these players kind of caught out.
I mean, I think if you're Lethal's in Lethal's position there, there's no way Solo's playing like that if they don't have Primal. So in the blink of an eye, we have a checkpoint here for Shikigami. Nightmare doing a little bit of trolling with this comp. Here comes an orbital right now. Sound Barrier is the response. Blade, though, for Zera, still going to be dangerous for Shikigami. But Admiral's the first casualty. It's Danny to find that. Zera, nothing to do with the Blade. A Gravitic Flux, hope is quite gainful here for Kuffa. It looks like it only really caught Solo, maybe took him down to half. Drunk might have been involved. Should be a swift step away here, you'd think, for Graveyard. But the fact that they're fighting means that they don't have it off cooldown right now. They too will fall.
But it's another fight yet again, Mitch, where we see like a Kitsune rush open things up there with UV ending up using the orbital ray, and then they use the beat and they still don't come out on top. Right now, Nightmare has a huge advantage, right? They come back with their own beat, free beat basically, with a Bob in the mix. If you're gonna like layer those support ultimates and use them on top of each other, especially after getting that first checkpoint, you have to get a fight win. Early Suzu, nice shot though by Danny.
Danny salvaged that situation. The Suzu gave him the window at least to deal with Zero. Solo's down at the start of this fight. Drunk's going to attempt to blade him into a beat that seems inadvisable. Admiral is going to pick off the Genji. I wonder what the decision making is there for Drunk to look to blade here. That frontliner to really take eyes off him. An odd one.
Well, they end up getting the beat out, right? So that's not the worst thing in the world, being able to kind of get that sound barrier out, especially as Nightmare is pushing in towards your spawn, as Zero will change over to Tracer. So seeing some of his best hero picks here on Esperanca is... See, Danny's gonna have to go massive with this overclock, right? Really the only thing they're gonna have to work with.
And also, Bob is going to cut that line of sight off, so it might be a little bit tricky to get good. Yeah, look at Danny. What kind of sight line is this? It's so rough. There's nowhere safe to stand out. Cuffer under a lot of pressure, but Solo got brought down. Kinetic Grasp used for much of that, and well, that's what happens, folks. Yeah. If you don't have space created by your tank, you cannot make use of those DPS ultimates.
The Bob charge actually connects with Drunk there early on, so it gets the Genji extremely weak, and then also just splits off the entire team. I mean, really difficult for Danny to get any type of angle. So now we're gonna have 2 support ults yet again for Shikigami. It'll be Kitsune Rush here used by Shikigami, then the Orbital Ray now used by UV, but they're holding on to this beat, right? You want to be able to have this beat right after. Yep, this is a good one.
I like this from Shikigami.
Yeah.
Good patience to hold on to that. Gravitic Flux now is unlikely to do too much. A little bit of damage is needed. Yeah, more than that onto Regime there. They're going to be able to get away. However, Graveyard has fallen and Drunk is standing inside their own spawn, folks. So that's a pretty grim tale of the tape. It is only Cuffer, though, here. I don't think the bot is actually being pushed here in a positive direction right now for Nightmare.
But they can't kill it. I mean, so you have Solo just kind of splitting players off, right? But you can't get rid of Kuffer. Kuffer's going to make it back.
Cuffer, please. Thank you, Drunk.
All right. He's down. I mean, Kuffer lived for ages there. Just a raid boss without any supports. As we are about to be under 2 minutes. Nightmare with a huge lead as Drunk will move over here and play Echo as okay, so Kuffer's going to bring out the Hazard. So Hazard, we saw a lot of teams play early on. We've seen it actually from Nightmare probably the most like recently, right? I know we saw them play it
People
a
moving
lot
off
yesterday.
it, but not them as much.
Yeah,
at least.
they still feel like it's really strong, even listening to Lethal in the interview.
Okay, so Primal is a response to the beat. This means that Nightmare can't really use the beat aggressively to set up like a favorable fight condition. They're going to be too disrupted. There's no way Zera's thinking about pulsing Danny here.
He is. No, he is.
Oh, I think he was thinking about
I think
that.
he was going to go for it.
I think you might be right.
he was going to go for it. Yeah, I mean, you could tell. He was like, okay, as soon as Recall comes out, I'm making a clip.
Danny, although, went for it. Didn't quite connect, though. Got to wait out those recalls, of course. Okay, UV. I was going to say, there's no reason to survive that. I've seen some pretty dirty stuff from UV on the Juno in the past. So, bot on the way back to parity here. Nightmare a little disjointed, but they are going to walk in with that pulse bomb that Zera was so wide.
You said when you said UV with like the movement on the Juno, I just immediately thought of Squid, like how crazy like some of his plays on the Juno have been throughout the stages. So you lose Lethal here at the start, so an opportunity maybe to just kind of get some free progress here. They've actually kind of caught out Drunk like floating over the building there, trying to get back to the rest of the team. They actually find him, spot him out.
So how do they use this rush? Right now, it's about putting the Fear of God in Cuffer. He's going to have 2 healers that Solo can't access because Jump was off cooldown. Oh, buddy, that's ugly stuff. Oh, dear. Shikigami, they legitimately pop the Kitsune Rush, which would indicate that they want to fight. Instead, they spend their time trying to kill a tank who won't die, and then they end up getting slapped. They have Sound Barrier released for Regime this next fight. A duplicate up here for Drunk. But it's an orbital raid they're going to have to play into, as well as Lethal, who's honestly struggled against this dive comp a little bit more. I think the comp's actually pretty okay against the Sojourn, so to speak. But what about the backline?
I was gonna say, what kind of fight do you even get off, right? You have an orbital right here for UV. It's actually kind of split Shikigami a little bit. It'll be a dupe here, potentially, for Drunk, as it'll be a dupe on the Juno, but immediately takes a shot from Lethal.
Yeah, Drunk will be knocked out of that dupe form, and, well, everybody gets a bit of spike guard action, I guess, inside the clock tower. And that'll be that. Admiral holds onto the sound barrier, knows that there can be a game ender, and he'd be right. Nightmare here take their second map. Again, pretty convincing, albeit just short of a full cap.
Yeah, Shikigami, they gained a little bit of meters at the end, I believe. They gained like 15 or so on top of their original, I think, 50, right? So they do gain some decent progress, but obviously not close to where Nightmare gained. Nightmare looked strong yet again.
Yeah, I mean, I think they were solid. Things started to fall apart a little bit when, at some point we saw a decent comp put together by Shikigami. Like I thought that the Echo Tracer with the dive tank was fine. Initially, it was, I think, in response to the attempt of playing the poke comp, right? We saw the Sigma set up here. But even after the Hazard switch, it did feel like Lethal still didn't have a whole lot of room to work with. Kaffa wasn't always able to be relevant. But I would say that having your opponents use Kitsune Rush and 3 players and trying to use the Rush only to kill Kaffa and not being able to do that probably meant that he was relevant at that point in the game. So definitely grew into the Hazard shoes, so to speak, and was really
dude,
for Shiki
the damage reduction on Spike Guard is kind of crazy, right? Obviously, it kind of like only works like in the front side,
like
right? When taking some damage.
Right?
Yeah, it's a significant amount of damage reduction, especially when you're getting like healed from like a player or two, right? So even if you're dedicating resources to be able to kind of take out the Hazard, it's still not a sure thing. I mean, this just highlights a Kaffa just solo spawn killing for a bit. As Danny on the Tracer here, I thought this comp towards the end was probably the best look here for Shikigami, right?
I think so. I think like Graveyard Regime on this backline duo look quite good, but there are like a couple of fights where, you can look at the tape and say, man, like this just they're not getting the value here. Like a Sound Barrier comes into a fight, they lose that fight, right? We see it earlier on where like Regime goes quite low, gets Suzu'd. They're fighting towards, Nightmare's bridge side of the map, so they beat. And they don't have the opportunity to make use of it. They were disengaging at the time, so they beat, and then they want to go up again, but all of a sudden Nightmare are gone. Then I've already talked about the Kitsune Rush, I think, at length, but we saw that earlier on. It's really about like being on the same page enough to take advantage, like to take full advantage, to exploit those support ultimates in order to take the upper hand and win these fights convincingly. But unfortunately, things aren't linking up as well as they ought to, I think.
That's the thing. If you're going to use these ultimates, right, be aggressive, move in behind them, do something with them, right? Just kind of using them and sitting in the mid, in the neutral, and just kind of like waiting. Nightmare obviously is not going to just play into your hands, right? They're not just going to kind of like run at you. They're gonna figure out a way to kind of circumvent that. So it'll be a map pick here. Final map pick for Shikigami. It'll be Suravasa. The pick potentially we'll see. What do they go with in terms of bans? It looks like we do have a sub for Nightmare. It'll be Clear in with Kaffa coming out. Okay.
We saw Clear a ton last year on this Nightmare roster, right? He was there in Stockholm as well. I got to chat with him. But we haven't seen much of him yet this year. It's been a lot of Kaffa. So Clear might be the option for the Diva and the Malga. Even like I think I've seen Clear on Queen as well, right? That does give you like a slightly different hero pool than what we've sort of seen from Kaffa. Suravasa pick here from Shikigami is no surprise. It's one of the maps that they are often trying to take us to here. And yeah, Hazard banned from Shikigami. So they might be trying to like force a Malga scenario. And I think Nightmare have actually preempted this. They've also got rid of the Lucio, which I think is very clever.
Yeah, they got rid of the Lucio, right? Which opens up, we saw Nightmare play yesterday. They played like an Ana-based setup here, right? I think they played like on a Juno, and they were able to really kind of cause some problems, especially when other teams play like the Malga into that, or you can play like an Ana with a Kiri for like a cleanse potentially. So I think you're going to see something like that at a Nightmare.
Yeah, quite possibly. A ton of options here still for you to work with. The lack of Lucio speed isn't really the end of the world when you do have Hyper Ring available from Juno. Like you've got ways of getting that speed.
There's also the speed boost now naturally out of spawn, right?
Yep. Yeah, which lasts long enough to sort of make it less of a trudge across the map. But sometimes like, even rotating from one flashpoint to the other, it's like nice to have that speed, but definitely not essential at all. Yesterday, yeah, we saw the Lucio ban give us like two very different compositions on this map. I actually think that the Lucio ban on Flashpoint might become a bit more of a common thing, at least in this region here. We're seeing it every now and then, but it's definitely, I think some teams might be of the opinion that it's a crutch to some on a map that really requires like decent planning ahead and rotations. So we'll see if that ends up coming through.
According to Lethal,
this weekend.
The ball is a little bit of a crutch comp, right? I know playing the ball is something that what do you say? It was like basically like teams that are not as coordinated and can't figure out some of the other stuff. Basically, teams that really enjoy solo play.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about that in just a sec. Obviously, these are your drops as well. January 24th through February 23rd, folks. Make sure you hang out with us for a while. 12 hours gets you all this stuff, by the way. And over the course of that entire month, I reckon we can get you there, especially if we just keep.
I mean, you want all the stuff. There's no point to get half the stuff, right?
No,
I mean,
because the good stuff, the really good stuff, especially over towards the end here as well. The drops as well, face it point drops, we're giving them out in chat. This is what you need to do in order to be eligible for them. I've seen a lot of people like, bro, I've been in here all day, I haven't got my face it drops. Well, just make sure you've done these, and then you can complain, right? So hang out with us on OWCS, but make sure you sign up and link your face it account. Lethal said that the Wrecking Ball was a crutch for teams that didn't have good communication lines between their front and back lines.
I mean, that makes a lot of sense, right? The ball can be pretty self-sufficient, right? Doesn't really need a ton to work with to make it pretty effective, right? We see a lot of Wrecking Balls play off of the health packs, play off of adaptive shields, so definitely don't exactly need loads of support from the back line. So we'll see now. Clear coming in if there's any different types of changes in terms of tank, but right now looking to be a Ramatra head to head.
Okay, Juno Brig for both sides, very similar looks, but I do think that the Pharah is a nice touch here for Zera. The Symmetra again, I mean, it's definitely Shikigami disadvantaged in this matchup compositionally.
They have to have a read of obviously, and maybe there's some scrimmages that go on, or just kind of whether it be Bonds is Danny takes some rocket shots. I mean, that is just you're not going to be able to live through this.
I don't know if you should be letting this happen.
There is no response for the Pharah that's going to be there for Shikigami, right? They're going to play with this sim in the mix, and you're going to be able to just take huge advantage.
No, it feels like Zera is like the hyper-evolved, advanced alien species arriving like on the planet, and you know the poor Symmetra comp is like just the animals that have just crawled out of the primordial goop. You know what I mean? Like they're just studied by Nightmare. Yeah.
All right, so Shikigami, they're playing the ball comp, right? Ball in the mix now. This is where Lethal can become like even more impactful for Nightmare, right? Constantly hacking this ball. Make it really difficult for Solo to like make it over towards those health packs.
I like this. I mean, we sort of saw this against Nightmare at times. I think it's less simple. And I like that Shikigami sort of feel like this is the kind of comp that they can put in front of Nightmare and say, okay, now deal with this. Nightmare do have Sombra, they do have Brig, right? So you have some options. And again, if they can outmatch Solo's impact on the fight, you know, or with Clear or you know, someone else, I think that's fine. They also, Nightmare control the point right now. So they do, in a sense, like have the luxury of being able to react to this stuff. Shikigami don't have any time to flip it back.
You see how Nightmare plays this though, right? Once they get Solo weak and you know he's not on the objective causing any chaos, what happens? It's Nightmare actually just using a little bit of a speed ring and moving on in, taking out a backliner, taking out Danny, right? You know, while the ball is recovering, taking advantage of those moments.
Oh, look at this dive. Look, Graveyard's really vulnerable here. For some reason, though, yeah, Clear just opts to head back towards the point. Zera has done a very good job getting his heads swiveling in the farthest direction. And the Sojourn, like, tweak is good, right? Shikigami have a comp that definitely seems like it's more apt at dealing with what Nightmare have, but it's not a given. A lot of it comes down to execution, and if they keep punishing Graveyard, who's often on their own, then Shikigami will never be in position to mount a comeback.
But playing on Juno, there's no real protection for like the backline, right? And Danny, so if you don't land like a sleep or like even a bio, right, you're in a lot of trouble because you're going to get collapsed upon by the Ramatra, the Pharah, and the Sombra.
EMP active here.
Yeah.
Pretty rough for Drunk, who will be caught out in the open with no hope of getting home. Nano for Regine. Lethal says, okay, we'll take those. Regine will live and we'll have this orbital ray. And I agree with this for Shikigami. You need to give yourself the best chance of winning. And if that means committing a nano in this fashion, fine. There's not really a better candidate for it anyway, or not that much better. However, Regine will still fall. They do get an orbital ray away, though, and it seems to have bought enough time for Shikigami to mount some sort of resistance. But again, the result is the same.
That was pretty sick though from Admiral. I don't know if you saw it. He ends up popping the rally, turns the corner, and actually gets a stun onto the Juno regime at the time, and just whip shots him back, just like insta kills him. So high value kill there from Admiral, as it'll be a tracer now here for Zero. So moving away from the Pharah, maybe he doesn't feel it's as impactful on this point.
Brig Kiriko. Okay, I was going to say, that's not a comp I am used to seeing at all. Never mind. Regime's still on the Juno for the time being. Solo, what are we looking for? Minefield play. Okay, Pile Driver comes in and... What? No one's really inside the minefield, unfortunately. There's a shield bash away for Admiral. Clear comes in with the Annihilation now, is trying to keep this one going, and will be able to do so by stopping by Solo and topping up a little bit. Feels like a gas station. That's a pretty high look. I mean, you want to talk about making space? That is exactly what Ramatra has just done here. However, that minefield eventually becomes relevant. Yeah. Solo's able to come through on a second pass and knock 2 players from Nightmare into it, so nicely done.
99% though for Nightmare, right? So you're going to be able to come back in, engage around this EMP from Lethal, and you think that's enough to be able to win it. But they got to make sure they collect Graveyard inside of that EMP, right? Getting very close to the rally. That could throw just a big wrench in Nightmare's plans coming into the fight.
There is a switch up after Solo had a bit of a hero moment there. Still feels like the idea is to make it harder for Clear to make that space. You saw what he did. He basically part of the Dead Sea when he walked in with that Annihilation. Here he comes, and it's going to be knocked away. Now they've got to save Clear. There's going to be a follow-up to this EMP. I think that's significant. Yeah, Ultraviolet swings that corner, and there are torpedoes at the ready.
And that's the rally used there as well, right? They try and rally. They actually get the rally out, and they're trying to save Solo, but it does not matter. Drunk does connect with 2, so making it quite interesting.
Yeah, but I think Lethal bringing him down, just taking that kill in response. There's nothing left here for Shikigami on this flashpoint. So a couple of different looks for them. I'm enjoying seeing a few different comps here from Shiki. They tried the ball. It only gets them so far. In fact, they probably only get some value once they decided they were going to switch off of it, honestly. But now this Orisa comp might be their last gasp on this map.
Yeah, well, earlier on in the series, they went to the Orisa, and it kind of negated some of the stuff that Lethal was trying to do on the Sombra. So maybe this is also, you can get this Sombra to switch off, as the EMPs have really been crucial in these fights for Nightmare, right? They've been winning a lot of them behind that, you know, huge ultimate from Lethal.
All right, we're going to have Juno Rays ready for this fight. Not a moment too soon there. Solo was feeling the pressure. Ultraviolet holds his for the later deployment. Drunk out of the way, doesn't really fancy trying to take on Zera, but Admiral falls despite theoretically being inside that orbit array. Not able to make use of the healing, at least enough. Decent damage here on Danny Regime. Look at those health bars up the top. They are, yep, struggling. Ultraviolet can chase those kills, and they do. They all end up giving themselves up, but to trade of backlines entirely now with Admiral returning to the fray soon, you'd think. Shiki, you've taken the point to start with now. Clear just shrugs off the javelin spin and puts Solo in a rough spot. Yeah, that Annihilation just cleans him up, and a little bit early on that one, face it.
Yeah, you had Solo and Drunk there, right? You were able to just kind of keep those 2 players alive by the point, but it's the Annihilation forces Drunk away, and then Solo on his own. You get a overclock as well there from Zero, so I just end up getting those kills, just clearing out the point. So even with Shikigami getting control of it there at the start, it's not going to amount to much.
Rally, and that's not where you want to be if you're Graveyard. Good sleep, but there were just too many of these Nightmare players swarming over them. Tough stuff here for Shiki. They get a flip back, but they are definitely short-handed. Drunk's been able to do work, at least get a pulse on towards Zera now, but yeah, still 4 players for Nightmare to be going on with. And without Solo to work with, they didn't feel, I guess, they had an opportunity to get a Terror Surge off there. It was just a quick flip to delay, Nightmare finishing the map.
The flips, those just seem pretty poor, right? In the sense that you're just kind of like running to the point, right? If you're Shikigami, like there's not really a it seems like a strategy in terms of like getting the point and then playing off of it from there. It seems like they just kind of have a player make it by, and then that player is going to contest. It's going to be an EMP. Just everybody. I mean, those are the 2 players you wanted to try and keep live, right? I mean, 90% you lose both supports.
It's perfect.
It's tough stuff.
It's been a tough map for Graveyard in general. Now on the Ana just doesn't have the flexibility to link up with the rest of the team when there has to be a quick pivot or a quick rotate out. Nicely done here by Nightmare. They will close up the entire series with a win here on Suravasa.
And nothing you could really even complain about from Nightmare's perspective, right? We saw a lot of different comps. We saw Clear come into the game. Everybody playing at a high level. Shikigami, look, they tried everything they could, right? Changing up the comps left and right, just could not get anything going.
Yeah, I was not ready to be back. Just spilled my coffee.
Welcome back.
Hello. Yeah, no, it's a shame. I have a really big mouse pad. It's very absorbent. So all is well. All is well in Nightmare's world as well. Not a map has been dropped. They continue the dominant streak. And Shikigami, obviously, this was not their match to win.
9 maps. That's all I'm going to say. I do think that we have a day here, and these aren't going to happen, I think, all the time, but we just have top 4 going against the bottom 4, right? It does need to happen at some point. These are the opportunities where we really get to see, I think, the best of Shikigami, and frankly, it wasn't enough to win, but I did like some of the switch-ups we saw on comps. I thought that they did not use hero bans effectively, or they were not able to get value out of hero bans against this Nightmare team, and that doesn't have to be their fault, but you know, you want to do everything you can to give yourself the edge, and it's really hard to see, how they gained equity from that phase of the match.
I also think with how the top, of NA is sorting itself out, with a 3-0 here from Nightmare, the other teams need this to be a 9 map day, right? You need to keep pace in terms of like that map differential, right? Dropping a map here or there to like, an Amplify, Shikigami, Rad, right? Like, could definitely be impactful in terms of seeding come playoff time.
Yep.
I like this look though.
Wild.
I like the Echo Tracer kind of die from them. I think that looks strong. I like them on a fast pace composition like that. I think those divey fast pace comps have definitely been their strong suit.
Like Mitch said though, I don't think the bans were ever like really impactful for Shikigami. No. It seemed like that Nightmare was able to just kind of move on to something else and play that with ease. I also think a part of that is like UV is so good at so many of the different supports. Like this backline for Nightmare is actually really
I mean, what would you even ban?
Okay, so
how do you actually feel you can
half of the point with the picks and bans is not only to like try and counter stuff you don't want to deal with on the opposing team, but set yourself up for your best comp to be the best comp on that map. That's what you want to do, right? Like you want like your comp to be like the meta comp on that map, considering what the bans are. I don't know if Shiki were ever able to get into that position. They were constantly switching up their comp to try and counter, but they at no point did Nightmare go, we're going to answer your comp and try and find a way to stop it. It was just like, we're just going to do what we want. I think that like I think a lot of it comes down to the executions of like the right setups, but there's like, it's a Lucio-less map, right? How do you turn that problem into something that benefits you? How do you turn that weakness into a strength, right? Because that means then, of course, the best comp is not going to include Lucio. So maybe it is like a less mobile comp with high healing that's more brawl oriented, that has a backline that has still the flexibility to avoid dive. I don't know. There's probably a few more layers to it, but that's something I think to think about. That's how you get a little edge against these top teams, and it's accumulation of those edges over the course of the series that gets you the maps that keep you out of relegation, or God forbid, give you a series win somewhere along the line.
It's just so frustrating because, quite frankly, like, this is week 3, and each and every single week we've seen a different kind of meta. So how do you prepare for those specific bans, for those specific maps, when you don't even really know what is being played? Like, it's hard to have a real idea of that.
I mean, I think there's enough footage with some of these teams. We could talk a little bit about this with our player of the match, Zero, who had a really good game. Whether it be like, I know Genji really specifically looks really strong at times. I think you're seeing the meta change like weekly, right? Because like, okay, this week we've seen actually a ton of like Ramatra, a ton of Maga, like not as much ball with like a lot of the teams, right? So like, maybe there's a way that you can now like going into next week, right? Next week with perks is going to be a little bit wild, but like, how do you use some of the bans maybe to get some of the Maga and Ramatra out of the way, right? How do the perks impact the bans, right? Like, is there
but the turnaround is not that long.
Heroes that work really well with each other.
The turnaround is only so. Yeah.
You get a coach to coach you for free. Like,
you get a coach. That's.
I mean, I'm sure they have one, right? But like,
way.
Yeah, you have to put the work in out of game, and I think it takes a lot of work, and it's about to take a lot of work now with the changes coming to the game. But that's what I would say, just a support system that allows you to gain those out of game edges.
Yeah, because the turnaround is 4 or 5 days, and you only can fit so many scrims. Some of these players are not doing this full time either. Some of them are still studying, or doing different kind of work, or just. Yeah.
If you're not full time, you're still studying, then maybe like you have to temper your expectations, right? And maybe you're not going to be as good as the full time teams.
When there's like huge major updates, like some of the best ways, I believe, like even for teams to figure out things is like, you play a ton of ranked, right? Like if you're going to play like scrims, right? The things that you're going to see are just, a very narrow kind of subset of what could be seen, where like playing ranked, you're going to see all different, especially at the rank that the level of players play at, you're going to see all different types of like combinations and all different types of things that you're going to be able to, you know, maybe pinpoint some things that didn't, we would have never have seen otherwise, right? That like, you know, there's a duo who finds something absolutely absurd and just kind of like abuses it, right? And
That's
like,
how it
you're
happens.
going to be
That's
able
why
to,
the Torb sim thing was
right.
is in the game.
Yeah, so like that,
Exactly.
you know, you can look at it as like, okay, we're gonna scrim super hard when the perks come out, but you could also look at it as like, okay, let's all take like a day and a breather, play a ton, and then see what happens.
You know what? Let's chat to Nightmare's coach about their approach to perks and all things around it. We have Weeds joining us for a quick chat. Actually, never mind. I'm lying.
Hello, I'm Weeds.
Full of lies.
How are you doing today?
But I would love to chat to Weeds. I just generally feel like coach interviews, there's so much more to chat about currently with them, since before that, I mean, they barely ever gave us
He was going to
answers.
do the interview, but then remembered that Perks comes out next week, so he's stuck.
He was like, actually, I don't
I
have
need
time
to
for
utilize
this,
every
which is so
second
fair.
I have from here till then.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's-
All right. Well,
But maybe we get to chat with Weeds another time. But for now, it's just gonna be the three of us. So
cool. I mean, we were on a roll.
yeah,
on
that's
a roll.
right. Yeah, we're on a roll. I don't need other friends. I have the two of you to look at standings and all the good stuff. So let's
You said
do
that with a lot
that
of
for quick
enthusiasm.
seconds. I mean it. I genuinely mean it. I am also very tired, and I just spilled my coffee, so I'm miffed, and I don't get to talk to Weeds, so day ruined. But you know, maybe
Yeah.
tomorrow will be better. And standings I also am not getting. So like, I don't know. I don't know what to do.
You want
anymore.
standings?
I wanted standings.
We can do that.
Yeah.
Oh, really? I mean, we can.
Can you
I'm sure
can
we
you sort me out? Can you sort me out?
No. We can't do that either. No, sorry.
No, okay, never
Well,
mind.
I can do this.
How about?
So, time
Okay, one last.
SSG is right underneath them. Underneath them
You know what?
is
So-
Nightmare, and then
You nailed it.
Liquid's in fourth.
Okay, something I
right now
do-
with 13 and 5, right?
Perfect.
13 and 5 is the map differential to
Yup.
beat.